The close of the 4th dynasty saw the end of the expensive stone pyramids and the introduction of new mud brick structures simply faced with stone. A good example is this pyramid here at Saqqara, built by Unas of the 5th dynasty.
To guarantee his immortality, hieroglyphic pyramid texts were inscribed on the chamber walls, and priests prayed for him in the nearby temple. Interestingly, at this location is a relief showing people praying to the gods for food during a disastrous famine. Other inscriptions record that the community had known about this famine in advance and that it lasted for 7 years.
Mentuhotep was the powerful prime minister at the time. He was revered as the giver of good and the sustainer of life.
Some scholars have suggested that this might be the Joseph referred to in the Hebrew scriptures, who distributed food to people during the 7 years of famine.
The largest canal in Egypt runs from the Nile River into the Fayoum Oasis. It's called Joseph's Canal. The Antiquities Department claim that it derives its name from the Joseph of the ancient scriptures.
Despite the life-threatening famine, the kings of the later 12th dynasty continued their relentless search for life after death. They built pyramids next to Joseph's Canal. But the question remains, who made the bricks and provided the labour for these pyramids?
The bricks may have been made by Israelites forced to build this pyramid.
For the pharaohs, the key to the search for life after death was the continuation of their ruling line. But King Amenemhet III had no sons, only a daughter, and she had no children. Would the dynasty end and his immortal memory perish?
I was in the Petrie Museum and I happened to notice this replica on display. It's a replica of Amenemhet III. And this would have been the man whose daughter went down to the River Nile and found this little baby. Now, why was she there? We know that this man's daughter, whose name was Sebek-nefer-Re, had no children. Now, that means if the dynasty died out because she had no children, it would be disastrous. And so she would be down at the River Nile praying for a baby, because the river god, Hapi, was the fertility god, and if you need a baby, well, that's the god you need. And she would be down there praying for a baby, and lo and behold, here comes this beautiful little baby in a basket. I mean, it seems strange to make an Israelite slave a future pharaoh. But when you understand that the Egyptians were very pious and they attached a lot of importance to this sort of thing, and so she would have chosen this baby as her next heir because she had no children of her own. Well, of course, you know what happened. In the course of time, Moses showed his true colours and he fled from Egypt. And sure enough, when her father died, she became the last pharaoh of the 12th dynasty. And of course, when she died, the dynasty died. That was the end of the dynasty.
In his search for the meaning of life and the hereafter, the Hebrew scriptures tell us that Moses had decided to look elsewhere. Soon after, we find that Egypt was devastated by a series of plagues, as outlined in the Ipuwer papyrus in the Leiden Museum. The papyrus contains an Egyptian account of the 10 plagues, which fell on the country when the king of Egypt refused to release the slaves. Eventually, after the death of his son, the king ordered Moses to take the Israelites and go. The Israelites fled to freedom through the Red Sea. When the king tried to follow, he and his army perished beneath its waves. For the next 4 centuries, Egypt was plunged into its dark ages, and the Egyptians themselves became slaves. Eventually, the Amu were driven back out of the land, and the kings of the 18th dynasty established a new kingdom. They made their capital 800 kilometres south of Cairo at a place now called Luxor.
Here at Luxor on the east bank of the Nile is the city of the living. Houses and public buildings made of mud bricks surrounded the royal palace. Today they're almost all gone, but the vast temple remains.
A processional avenue of human-headed sphinxes still connects the Luxor temple to the Karnak temple, the largest ever constructed.
This hyper-style hall was built by Seti I and Ramses II. It was used for religious celebrations and the coronation of new kings. Inside, 134 of these huge pillars stretch metres into the sky.
On the temple wall is an inscription written by King Thutmose III. It pictures the treasures captured from a place called Qadesh, a city in Palestine many believe to be Jerusalem. After ransacking the city, Thutmose hoped to advance his own claim for immortality by dedicating the spoils to the god Amun. Among the treasures he brought back were brass dishes and 300 golden shields. Interestingly, the Bible also mentions 300 shields, which were originally placed in the sanctuary by King Solomon.
Some scholars consider that King Shishak, mentioned in the ancient scriptures, could well be Shishonk I. If so, then this inscription written by the king would be further evidence of the historical accuracy of the scriptures.
To preserve their bodies for immortal life, the kings of the 18th and 19th dynasties chose to be buried in secret. Their last journey was across the Nile River to a place called the Valley of the Kings.
These two colossal statues of King Amenhotep III greet visitors to the city of the dead. They're the only remains of his mortuary temple, where priests brought food and drink to sustain him in the underworld and to pray for his immortal life. Here at Deir el-Bahari is the temple of Queen Hatshepsut, one of the most remarkable women in history.